If your Betta is suffering from Popeye, the good news is the chance of you misdiagnosing it are very rare. And some more good news is that with the right care, Popeye in Betta fish is completely curable. So keep watching to find out how to cure it, as well as what causes it, how to prevent it, and much more. What is Popeye? Popeye is an affliction that affects all fish, not just Bettas. Popeye is when pressure behind the eye causes the eye to protrude. It's a disease that's easy to prevent rather than treat. If left untreated, Bettas often die, but hope isn't lost just yet. What causes Popeye? Unfortunately, you can't pinpoint what causes Popeye to one source. There are a whole range of causes of Popeye, and if you don't treat the correct one, then the problem is only going to get worse. There are two different types of Popeye, unilateral Popeye and bilateral Popeye. Here are the most common causes of both. Unilateral Popeye. If you notice your fish has a unilateral Popeye, where only one eye is affected, then it may not be an infection of any kind. In most cases, one eye swelling is caused by physical damage. This can be a result of your fish banging into something, getting into a fight with another fish, or even if you're too rough when catching him in a net. If your Betta is housed in a tank with others, and he only has unilateral Popeye, then it's almost guaranteed to be the result of physical damage. Bilateral Popeye. If you notice that your Betta has Popeye in both of his eyes, then it's almost certainly an infection of some kind. The infection can be caused by parasites, fungus, or bacteria. You can know for certain if it's caused by an infection if you notice that your Betta is also suffering from another disease as well. What are the symptoms of Popeye in Bettas? If your fish is suffering from Popeye, there are more than one symptom apart from the most obvious. Eyes popping out. The most obvious symptom of Popeye is one or both eyes popping out. In fact, when you see the symptom alone, you can guarantee that your Betta is suffering from Popeye. As previously mentioned, it can be one eye that's popping out, or both, and you'll have to treat each case accordingly. The eyes have changed colour. As well as eyes popping out, your Betta's eyes may also change colour. They could look cloudy or milky. This occurs when the cornea has ruptured, but it could also look blood-stained. A blood-stained eye is most commonly associated with physical aggression. A white ring around the eyes. This is something to look for early on, and if you spot it, you may be able to treat Popeye before it causes your Betta's eyes to pop out. If you do notice a white ring around your Betta's eyes, then you should start treating it for Popeye. Other signs of illness. Your Betta will also show some of the typical signs of illness when his Popeye is an infection. You'll notice a lack of energy as well as a loss of appetite. He may also seem to stay in one place more often and try to avoid other fish as well. How to cure Popeye. If your Betta is suffering from Popeye, then you're going to have to treat it depending on the circumstances. The way you treat Popeye caused by physical harm is different from Popeye caused by illness. Popeye caused by physical harm. If you think that Popeye is a result of physical harm, then there's not much you can do, unfortunately. The good news is that this kind of Popeye is less likely to be fatal because your Betta isn't in a dangerous environment. Here are the steps you should take. Remove 10% of the water from your tank and place it into a container. Add your Betta to the container and dose it with Epsom salt. There will be a recommended amount on the bottle as well as instructions on how to use it. But if not, people often use 1 tablespoon per gallon. Just remember that you should dissolve Epsom salt before adding it to the container. You should leave your Betta in the container for 10 minutes before adding it back to your main tank. Remember, before adding it back to the main tank, it will need to be acclimatized for a couple of minutes. Make sure you float the container in your aquarium water to keep the water warm enough. Alternatively, you can also add aquarium salt to your tank, which is going to improve your Betta's immune system, as well as helping him recover faster. If you're adding salt, you should be changing your water more often. Popeye caused by infection. If your Betta is suffering from Popeye due to infection, then the method of treatment is going to be different. The first thing you'll need to do is move your Betta to a quarantine tank. If you don't know how to set up a quarantine tank, then you can learn everything you need. Once you've moved your Betta from your main tank, you should also perform a 100% water change. This is going to help reduce the chance of other fish getting infected. Begin treating your Betta with ampicillin and aquarium salt. You should use 1 capsule of ampicillin for every 10 gallons of water. Make sure you pre-mix the ampicillin with a small amount of aquarium water before adding it to your tank. It's always best to consult a professional before you do this, as different medications will require different dosages. Perform a 100% water change every 3 days and add ampicillin and aquarium salts. Make sure you don't use ampicillin for more than 10 days or the recommended amount of time. Once you've finished fully dosing your Betta, change the water 1 more time and leave your Betta until you feel he's on the mend. Remember, Popeye can take months before the eyes return to normal. How do you prevent Popeye in Bettas? The best way to stop your Betta suffering from Popeye is preventing it in the first place. To do this, you should try to prevent the two main causes: physical damage and infection. There are a number of ways you can do this. How to prevent infection. If you're trying to prevent infection, then you're going to have to focus primarily on improving the water quality of your tank. Poor water quality is going to affect the immune system of your Betta, as well as stressing them out. Some of the main ways you can improve water quality are making sure you're not overstocking the tank. If there are too many fish in your tank, then your filter is going to have trouble cleaning the water quick enough. Remember, everything in your tank is going to have a bioload, and if the bioload increases quicker than your filter can remove it, then the water quality will start dropping. You should also be routinely changing your water. Depending on the size of your tank, this may be a complete water change or a partial water change. The bigger your tank, the less water you'll have to remove, and the more time you can leave between changes. If you notice any other fish in your tank have an illness, then remove them from the tank and move them to a quarantine tank instead. How to prevent physical harm. You should also try to limit the amount of physical harm caused to your Betta. This is easier said than done, and here are some of the things you'll need to watch out for. Make sure you don't have plastic plants in your tank. Plastic plants are too harsh on your Betta and can cause damage to their whole body, including their eyes. If you have plastic plants, you should substitute them for real or silk ones. Be careful when you plan on handling your Betta. If you need to scoop them up, take the extra time to make sure you do it with care, otherwise you could damage their eyes with the net. If you notice any other aggressive fish in your tank, then you should move them to another tank. Even if the breed is generally seen as peaceful, there's always an exception to the rule. You should look out for any fin nipping or aggressive behaviour. Make sure you're not turning your aquarium lights on too quickly. This can cause your Betta to become stressed and swim frantically. Instead, you should turn the light on in your room for a bit, and after 10 minutes turn your aquarium light on. Doing this replicates sunrise a lot better than a sudden change in lighting. Can Betta fish die from Popeye? If a Betta has a Popeye, it's quite hard for them to die from the ailment alone. In fact, it's not uncommon for eyes to become so damaged that they rot off and the Betta still survives. If this does happen, it can be harder to feed them, but in general, they can still live. What Bettas will die from is the conditions that cause Popeye. If your Betta is in bad water and already has Popeye, then it's likely to get another illness as well. So while Popeye itself is quite unlikely to kill your Betta, the infections that follow if nothing is done aren't. Is Popeye contagious? Just like the last question, Popeye itself is not contagious. If you took a Betta with Popeye out of your tank and moved it into a tank with great water conditions, it's very unlikely any other fish would catch Popeye. However, if one fish in your tank gets Popeye, then the others are more likely to as well, because infections that cause Popeye need poor water conditions to thrive. So while Popeye isn't contagious, it will infect other fish who live in poor water conditions. Just to recap, the good news is that if your Betta has Popeye, then he still has a good fighting chance, but you are going to have to make some changes to make sure he lives. Here are the most important things to remember. Popeye is when your Betta's eyes protrude from their face. It can be caused by physical damage or infections. If it only occurs in one eye, it's most likely caused by an injury, but if it's in both, then it's most likely caused by infection. If you plan on curing Popeye, you have to base your treatment on whether it's due to physical injury or infection. To prevent Popeye, make sure you eliminate anything that can cause physical damage to your Betta, such as plastic plants, or if it's caused by infection, make sure you keep the water conditions in your tank excellent. While it's uncommon for Bettas to die from Popeye, if it's caused by bad water conditions, something else is more likely to harm them. Popeye isn't contagious, but if it's caused by an infection, then water conditions that cause it are probably doing damage to other fish as well. If you like this video, make sure you check out the rest of my channel. Otherwise, have a great day.